you already have a couple years in the market, you have some marketing money. Yeah, like that be in between from being a startup to being a fully, 10 years in the market veteran company. Is there any must-haves or that you should spend your marketing money on, or you should spend your business growth investments towards, or industries that you should be joining to help you get you to that third stage?
So yeah, in this stage, you probably have started to get into a good number of stores. Your team is slowly growing. You have a few people out in the field. Your fan base is starting to grow, which is exciting. And at this stage, you should have, if not already, established your core values. You've started to develop your company culture, your brand identity. You're getting more into developing that client experience, and you've created that initial business model. Some mistakes I see both in phase 1 and 2, but maybe even phase 2 more, is that you're hiring too many salespeople too soon. And just because you have more salespeople doesn't necessarily mean more sales. So your company, you have to be ready for it. So make sure, and this is vital, that you can sell your product first. And that's based on that strong foundation that I mentioned in stage 1. And then you want to work backward from your goal. Start with like, how much revenue do you need to generate to continue growing? Identify the number of sales you need to get there, and consider how many tastings do I need to do? How many calls on accounts and emails will it take to achieve my revenue goals, right? And are those goals achievable with your current headcount? It might be time to hire, but this is how you find out. Just want to make sure, as with every stage, that everyone on your team is really committed, is a good fit, and also pulling their weight. So you don't want to just hire another salesperson because one isn't doing enough. You just have to be able to, it becomes critical not to expand too quickly, as I said, but really to identify your goals again and where you'd like to take the company. So for instance, I worked for a wine importer some years ago, and they were really clear on who they wanted on their team because it was a very specialized Italian portfolio. And so they were really picky with their choices and who they thought would be a good fit. And I worked the entire Hudson Valley region in New York, which is huge. And I also had some key accounts in Manhattan where I had some personal contacts. But I sometimes found myself thinking like, wow, this is a lot of territory and a lot of driving. But for some reason, sales came easy to me at the accounts I visited, and I spent time on because I knew what I was talking about. I was really passionate about the wines and the region. And I suppose the rate of return for me was greater because of that. And, the company could have easily hired someone else like up north just to cover something. But, they were they took their time finding, not to say that I'm so perfect and I knew everything, but, it was just like the right fit. And I was like, wow, they really identified someone who's passionate and can do it. So that becomes probably one of the most challenging things in any stage is hiring and managing people and creating that nice company culture. But it really, that's definitely one of the key things you should just be very aware of in this stage, is the rate of how fast you're expanding, and also the kind of people you have on your team. And is this the right fit? Do we continue, or do we sort of go backwards and reassess?
Because you're starting to see money in your account now, right? So yeah, it might be easy to view, there's a problem, let's hire somebody. Because, why not, right? You have the money, maybe it'll help you grow. Like you're at the stage, like you said, you're at multiple places that are distributing, a lot of places are selling your product. Is it time to try to get to the big stores, Walmart, Costco? I'm sure people are thinking it, right? They're thinking like, how many units are going to order from the bat? Like, what are the pros and cons, and should you do this? I've already seen you shaking your head, so go ahead.
Well, I think nothing against Walmart and Costco, but I would say trying to reach that level, and even any level, considering that would be a recipe for disaster in many ways, because of course, in order to get into these types of stores, you have to have the ability to produce enough. So are you producing enough? Are you going to be sure that you're going to meet their demands and also have enough resources, right? So if you walk into these stores though, and I'm talking about, I'm not an expert on the cider industry, but I think I know everyone from the small to the large. I can kind of envision. But when you go into these stores, how many brands do you see on the shelves that are not owned by larger corporations or companies? Not many, right? So obviously getting into these stores is very difficult. The shelf space is extremely limited, and the cost for you to produce compared to these larger brands will be much higher. How can you be competitive? And just because you're in these stores doesn't mean you're going to sell. So you have to have that marketing budget. You have to have these resources to compete with that size. But fundamentally, instead of chasing that, I really think you should ask yourself, like, what kind of brand do we want to be? Do we want to cater to a mass market? Is that the type of, and there's nothing, again, wrong with it. There's a place for every product, but do you want to be more of an upscale, any independent brand, like looked upon as like, which I think is really very, well, when I went to the Cider conference, in Chicago a couple of months ago, like that's that kind of your MO. It's like that sort of craftsmanship and small, and not to say that, you can't be big and still have, a good quality product, but you just have to ask yourself, like, is that in line with my brand, And it can be very, very tempting because, of course, like, oh yeah, it's guaranteed I'll sell X amount when I'm in Costco, but it's not. And you only have a certain amount of time to prove that you can actually, and then you'll spend a lot of money getting in there. So be very careful with that. I'm not saying yes or no, but at stage 2, I wouldn't recommend that you focus on that.
Are they little tidbits that because you've gone through it with other products, getting into big retailers, that not to scare people off, but they should be aware that with great power comes great responsibility, right? Type of thing. Little things that you're not expecting that are going to cost you money, time, and investment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like production, like you have to produce enough. If you can't meet their demands, they're going to kick you out and be like, all of a sudden, overnight, maybe God bless you if that happens, right? If you have like, I need 10,000 units, and then you're not prepared. I think that's the scariest scenario. And then you can't meet the demand. I'm like, and then the next one, there's lots of people in line behind you wanting to get in there, and with different branding ideas or different scenarios, right? So I think that I don't have any specific examples to give, but certainly I've had some scary horror stories from the past that it's just a different animal, and I think you need people who are specialists in that field to handle that for you. Don't go in there thinking that now I know what to do, because they have a very different way of doing business.
I think a lot at the same time in this stage, sometimes that you're growing steadily and that you could grow a lot faster. I mean, reach economy of scale, maybe new equipment, new everything, but you need capital. But you're not making enough sales for that capital to make that big jump in equipment or production and new facility. So you're stuck in like, well, I need more money. I'm selling. Do I just wait and save, or do I find some sort of investor or loan or something to jump to that scale that get there faster? So it's, how do we get capital in this stage? Are investors or banks looking for something specific? Can you shine a light into that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball telling you who would be willing to invest at this stage, but that'll vary as all investors are different. And many are skeptical to invest in alcoholic beverages for various reasons, strict regulated rules and can't apply it to everyone. And there is some sort of like risk around that. But having worked for investors, I can give you some tips for what they would be looking for and how you can prepare in order to sort of attract someone, right? First of all, obviously you need a quality, great tasting product. And that's still only a small, but very important portion of the recipe for success. But if you're committed to making the best quality product in your category, if that's your sort of MO, you can make a real impact. So, investors are really looking for integrity. And again, that's strong story, right? That's something that's passionate and stands out. Why did you create your cidery or your cider? Why should it exist? Does it have a place? Why should it have a place in the market? What's your vision for the company? And you have to back this up. You can't just tell a fairy tale story and a feel-good story, right? I mean, all forecasts should be based on factual, data-based assumptions. Investors know, believe me, how long it takes, how much money it'll cost. So as a startup, you're just not going to fool anyone with unrealistic numbers. And that, if you give them that, it shows a real lack of integrity, and that'll be something. So just make sure you need to show commitment also, that you're in it for the long haul. And if you're a cidery listening or working in the cider business, it takes a lot of work, right? It's a lot of hard work. And investors, They just need to see your willingness to work hard and stick with it. So investing, of course, is a numbers game, right? I mean, many investors want to see a 40% profit margin, or sometimes even higher, depending on what kind of beverage it is. But if you're not there yet, you should at least have a vision that includes that sort of clear line of sight for how you'll achieve that. And as for velocity, it goes back to what I was saying before. It's best to keep your focus very, very narrow and deep in your niche, rather than to create those good velocities, rather than wide and shallow, right? Trying to appeal to everyone, as we talked about before. So again, they don't want to see something that just is like whatever. They want to see, wow, this is interesting niche, right? And know your numbers. Oh my God, there are so many wineries, and I can't talk about ciders because I don't have enough experience, but so I just keep bringing that, winemakers that just don't know that side. They know how to make amazing wine, but they just don't know their numbers. You have to know them in your business inside out. Be prepared for any detailed questions. I mean, you can watch like Cheeseball, but like watch Shark Tank, right? Just to get an idea. And investors, they like trends, but they don't like those flash in the pan fads, like, what's, just hot for 2 minutes, so don't bank on that being sort of an attractive idea for them. And another thing is like showing that you're coachable and curious and you want to learn is attractive, and that you're not just a know-it-all. I know it all. Well, why are you here? And lastly, of course, you want to make sure that your presentation is on point. You have a solid business plan that's detailed, well thought out, along with that sort of comprehensive go-to-market strategy. And if you're not sure where to start, you can look to other companies to get examples of really impactful investor presentations that are available anywhere. And this is something I help my clients with in my consulting business, actually. And then also be prepared. You have to give up equity. Are you willing to do that? So there's pluses and minuses of both. But for sure, if you could get an investor on board, and you feel that's the right thing, there's these other points I would definitely have in place.